Yes. Let me also now quickly join, in fact, Ambassador Kanwal Sibal into the broadcast as well, former Foreign Secretary joining us live. Ambassador Sibal, appreciate your time. Now, Donald Trump's priority number one, it seems, is going to be on cracking down on immigration. How do you see him going ahead with this task?
Well, thing is that we have to be more interested in what it does on the foreign policy front. Insofar as domestic policy is concerned, our concern would largely be with regard to the H-1B visas, on which there is some feeling that he might clamp down on this as part of a larger agenda of controlling migration into the country. Now, of course, illegal migration is the biggest issue for him, and that was the case even during his first term. But there is always a tendency to conflate illegal migration with the legal migration. And that's where the debate on the H-1B visas start. But on that, it seems that Trump has changed his position. Elon Musk is very much in favor of a continuation of this program, though he wants to reform it. And Trump, as I said, has now made noises which are contrary to what he had said earlier. Now, insofar as illegal migration is concerned, the second largest number of illegal migrants in the United States, I believe, are from India. And there will therefore be a clampdown on this and deportation. We have taken the position, and rightly so, I believe, that we are willing to accept the illegal migrants, Indian migrants, back after the usual verifications, which means, therefore, that this issue can be handled by us with the United States without too much difficulty. On the H-1B visa, we'll have to see how that goes.
Yes. Now, what's your assessment then of Donald Trump's stance on China, sir?
There, the signals are mixed. He has telephoned Xi Jinping recently. The only person who he has named as someone who has been invited by him to visit his inauguration is President Xi. And clearly there has been some good messaging between the two, because despite all the threats that Trump has made with regard to imposing high tariffs on Chinese goods, as well as all the Chinese hawks that he has appointed in his administration, China is sending his vice president to the inauguration. Now, he won't be sending the vice president if on the morrow of his taking charge, he announces high tariffs on China, which will be then a snub to China. So if China has taken the risk of sending their vice president, it's clear that there is some behind-the-scene understanding. Now, what does that mean in terms of Trump's views on Chinese threats in the Western Pacific and the Indian Ocean and the Indo-Pacific concept in general, and more focus on building up, as the Americans say, they intend to do, India's capacities to deal with the China threat. So that is something that we'll have to watch carefully.
Yes. Now, how do you believe the issue of the Ukraine-Russia war is going to be tackled by Donald Trump? Thankfully, of course, a ceasefire has been achieved in Gaza. What about the Ukraine-Russia war, Ambassador Sibal?
Now, Trump has said repeatedly that he intends to find a solution. There seem to be some conversations going on between the two sides. Trump has announced that he's willing to, at some stage, meet President Putin. Now, if he can move ahead in this direction and work towards dialogue and a potential solution, which will inevitably involve some loosening of sanctions, this can help India's own ties with Russia, because at the moment there are a lot of roadblocks which have been placed on these ties because of these sanctions, including our inability to make them payment easily for what we purchase for them, especially oil. On the other hand, the Treasury Secretary nominee of Trump, uh, Bissent, has said in his confirmation hearings that Biden imposed very weak sanctions on Russia, and that if he gets the green light from Trump, he will impose such oil sanctions on Russia that will force Russia to come to the negotiating table, which means that they intend to arm twist Russia and potentially also deepen the sanctions on the oil sector, which will then have downstream effects, including on India. This is something that we have to watch.
Yes. Where do you see India-US relations now headed under Trump's second presidency? That's something that, of course, our viewers in India are very concerned and looking at very closely.
Well, I think the basics and the fundamentals of the relationship are strong, and they will continue. There is no reason why there should be any dilution of our larger strategic ties. On many of the issues, it is Trump who had taken the initiative. For example, on raising the Indo-Pacific or Quad to a ministerial dialogue, the renaming of the U.S. Pacific Command into an Indo-Pacific Command. So he committed himself to a stronger Indo-Pacific policy during his first term, and he does see China as a continuing threat, notwithstanding the overtures that he is making to China. There is a consensus, broad bipartisan consensus in the U.S. Congress against China, and his own nominees, whether it is the Secretary of State or the NSA or the Defense Secretary, they are China hawks. So he surrounded himself with people who see China as a principal adversary. If you have listened to the confirmation hearings of the new Secretary of State, Mark Rubio, he was very clear about that. Now, in that context, Trump can be expected to build on a relationship with India in defense and technology and other sectors in order to mutually benefit from understandings which can deter China's aggressive and expansionist policies in our region and beyond.
Yes. Do you also expect, Ambassador Sibal, better coordination between the US and India on the crackdown against Khalistanis? Again, an issue that has become of concern abroad, or perhaps in the Pannu case?
I think so. It would be surprising if it wasn't the case, because this business about Khalistani support was a product of the support that these elements were getting from the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and was indirectly or directly linked to this entire narrative of Hindu supremacy, Hindutva, and backsliding of democracy and persecution of minorities. So in this kind of narrative that was created in the West, including the United States, and also suppression of freedom of religion and all that, it was a kind of a narrative which served the purpose of the Khalistanis to project their vicious propaganda against India as a persecuted minority. This is very much a democratic phenomenon. I don't think Biden will buy into that. Insofar as the Panun case is concerned, my own feeling is that the fact that we announced the completion of our inquiry and said that we have identified the person with criminal antecedents and all that was intended to close the matter. Unfortunately, this Garcetti, the outgoing ambassador, unnecessarily said this is only a positive first step, but accountability and prosecution remain to be done and all that, which is totally unnecessary on his part. To go into this, he should have left the ball in the new administration's court. Of course, the fact is that there is a case in New York, but the prosecutor who launched this case has resigned, and he had links with Soros. But he has not resigned because of that, because he's been playing games against Trump himself. an entire cleaning up of this justice system, which is highly politicized, it is possible that the new administration may take a different view, especially since we have acknowledged that there was some, how should I say, reason for India uh, to investigate the matter, and the investigation has been done, and the person responsible has been identified and will be duly punished. They should help to close the matter.
Yes. Do you believe Donald Trump will be following up on his remarks which were made earlier regarding Hindus in Bangladesh? Do you believe Mohammed Yunus perhaps needs to worry in the Trump presidency?
He does. He does. Because he had put money into Hillary Clinton's campaign against Trump, and Trump hasn't forgotten that. After all, Yunus, his whole career has been built by the support he got from the Clintons, both Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. He got his Nobel Prize because of that. His Grameen project has been promoted by them, including a Grameen project in the United States. And it's through that, I believe, that he funneled money to Hillary Clinton's campaign. Number one. Number two, on this whole issue of Islamism and things like that, the Trump and the Republicans are much tougher than the Democrats were because the Democrats, as you know, within the Democratic circles, the minority issues were an issue of concern that they continue to flag for ideological reasons, especially the progressive left in the Democratic Party. Trump also, look, when he made this statement, it was also in order to galvanize the support of the Hindu Americans behind him. So it was both something which he may have genuinely felt, and secondly, something which he wanted to use for electoral reasons. But he would be sensitive to the rise of Islamic extremists in Bangladesh, and therefore we can count on more understanding from the establishment under Trump to take note of what is happening in Bangladesh with regard to the persecution of minorities, including Hindu and primarily Hindu minorities. So I think we should see a somewhat different attitude. It was surprising, really surprising, that the Democratic administration didn't have the courage till the last minute to talk about minority persecution, leave aside mentioning of Hindus, which is a pity, which just goes to show how cynical they were and how deeply involved they were themselves in the overthrow of Sheikh Hasina.
All right, let me quickly take that across to our final question then to Ambassador Sibal before we let you go. On his NSA pick, Mike Waltz, he's been an outspoken critic of Pakistan's continuous support for terror organizations. What about the US-Pakistan equation? What is that going to be under the Donald Trump presidency?
Well, there is this aspect which you mentioned, because he was also the co-chair of the India caucus, and therefore he has full understanding of our concerns in this regard. As you know, Trump in his first term, the moment he took office, he banned visas to 7 Islamic countries, if I forget not. So he has that in mind, that there is this issue of Islamic extremism and the export of Islamic extremism in the United States. And if you look what the Vice President J.D. Vance said about Britain, that the first Islamic state in Europe would be Britain. So you can see what their mindset is and what their attitude is. And it is through this perspective that they're likely to look at Pakistan. Number two, now that they're out of Afghanistan, they don't need Pakistan the way they needed earlier. Pakistan to be able to reach out to the Taliban and make their exit from Afghanistan easier. And now that the Taliban and the Pakistanis are quarreling with each other, so the situation has changed. There's one aspect, though, which is the Islamic State of Khorasan, which in America, they believe that this is the one which intends to target Western countries, including the United States, and they may want to keep some tabs on it. But this is relatively not key to any cooperation with Pakistan, though they would like to have cooperation in this regard.
All right, Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, let's leave it at that. Appreciate you joining us with your perspective on that big story. Do we have